Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we will be reacting to Rise of the TMNT Episode 6. So, I believe I said before that this was going to be the episode I was going to determine things by. I believe this is the episode. Was this the episode I said that? I don't know. I don't know. But I'm saying this now. I'm saying this now. I have to make a decision. I've been pretty back and forth on this series. Some episodes have actually been pretty good, but some episodes have been not so much for me. And I've heard that this series, like the way it's put up online and everything, pretty much everywhere you can find it, it's out of order. Apparently, apparently when it was aired out of production order, and everywhere it's been put up since it was put up in the airing order. So there's certain things that I guess aren't fully explained properly because of that. Like, I guess, like, I think it was last time, there was the pizza place they went to, the other dimensional pizza place or something like that, with the skeleton dude. Um, and apparently that is actually explained in another episode that's we've yet to see. Um, I didn't have any real questions about it. Like, it didn't confuse me at all. It's like I just thought, like, oh, they probably discovered this place off screen. It's like I don't expect that we're going to see every single thing that they do. It wasn't really like that big of a deal to me. But from what I've gathered, there are a lot of people who that did really confuse. And this isn't the only show that's done this kind of thing. There are other shows that have aired out of production, or I think OKKO did that, at least in its first season, maybe. Um, but yeah, it's like it's happened with other shows, and it can cause a problem for continuity and stuff. Now, for me, it hasn't, at least so far, bothered me. Like, it's not even really been noticeable. Um, Maybe it would get noticeable as it goes further on, but that's not been an issue for me. My biggest issue when it comes to this show is that I'm not getting hooked in yet. We've seen 5 episodes so far, 4 of which have been segmented. Only the first episode was a full length. All the rest have had segments. But we've seen 5 episodes, and all of them have been very mixed for me. Um, the issue is that there's certain aspects of this series that I like. I like that the characters act more like teenagers, but I also think some of the humor and jokes are honestly kind of juvenile. Um, I also think that some of it is very clearly geared towards an audience that is not me. If I'm just being honest, an audience that is younger than me, kind of like Gen Z humor and stuff is in this. Stuff that just doesn't appeal to me as much. Now, there are exceptions, of course. There are things in this that do appeal to me. There are jokes that do work. There's entire segments that are really good. Or at least enjoyable enough. But it hasn't been enough to make me sold on this series yet. I haven't become invested. I'm not invested in any of the characters so far. April is probably the best for me right now, just because I like her personality and attitude. None of the turtles are doing it for me yet. Like, I can't even say I have a favorite because none of them have clicked with me at all. And I'm still very put off by Splinter. It's not that I hate him, but I'm so utterly confused by his characterization in this being so drastically different from any other interpretation, which isn't the problem in and of itself, but the way it's done, it just doesn't make sense for me. It's like he doesn't register in my mind as Splinter. And again, it's not because he's characterized differently, because the turtles are. These are definitely not the same turtles that you see in any other version. But at the same time, I feel that I feel that it just takes them in a direction that's specifically not something that's clicking for me again. Um, because again, I have no issue with characters being different. Hell, I welcome characters being updated in different series. That's all fine. I have no issue with that. But it's like I think I mentioned in a previous reaction, but I had semi recently rewatched Batman versus the TMNT, and it's like if you watch that, that is the Turtles that I like, that I really like. That's more of the classic style Turtles, classic style characters, and it's just like it's really good, but it also fits in a modern interpretation. They work so well in that movie. You could probably find clips or whatnot on YouTube, or maybe a trailer if you want an example. But yeah, it's a really really damn good movie, and the turtles in it are just really fantastically characterized. Um, but here it's like it's so different, and in such a very specific way that it throws me off a little. There are good things though, and obviously just outside of the animation being great, uh, having mostly really good voice acting, stuff like that. Outside of the stuff like that, like again, there's some good jokes, there's some good dialogue, there's some good characters. Um, like I like the worm guy, who's voiced by the same guy who does Varric in Legend Korra. But it's like overall, it hasn't invested me. It hasn't made me care. And like prior to watching this, every time I've ever seen anyone like rave about the series and go like, "Oh, this is like the lowest rated Turtles series," but it has stuff like this. Every time it's been all about the animation. And I've never understood that, because that's the thing people seem to like utilize, for lack of a better word, in a lot of arguments regarding a lot of different shows. That was the big complaint with season 2 of One Punch Man, that the animation wasn't as good. It's like, forget, the fact that the story, characters and stuff could be better. No, the animation isn't as good, so that automatically makes it bad. People use that same complaint against Attack on Titan as well, when it changed studios and all. It's like, the animation, honestly, good animation's great, but animation quality is one of the least important aspects of a series. Story and characters they just are more important. They are what get you invested in a series. They are what get you hooked into wanting to continue watching. Granted, this is all just from my perspective and my experience. if there are some people who watch for the animation, that's fine. But it makes no sense to me, and I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to hide that fact. It makes no sense to me. To me, it's like the characters and stories are what drive any kind of piece of media, unless it's like a video game that's like just a little party game or little goofy thing or something like that that doesn't really need a story or characters and relies on its gameplay mechanics and stuff. But like for a show, for a movie, it's like you need to have story and characters that work. Um, and I think that's what's lacking for me with this series the most. Not saying that there's not good setup for a story here and everything, or that again, I'm not saying everything's like really bad. It's just again, for lack of a better way to put it, nothing is clicking with me. Nothing is making me invested and making me care about this series. Even the good episodes, the good segments, even those, it's like, yeah, they're good, but it's not really that good. They're not like impressing me on the level of stuff like The Owl House or hell, more recently, Symphogear. Symphogear is investing me. Symphogear is making me want to see more. I'm I care about the characters. I care about the story. I'm invested. And it's like then you go into this and it's like I'm not. It's just blatantly putting it, I'm not. And I I, I don't I don't want to force myself, as I've said in the past, to sit through a lot of slog to get to possible good stuff later. The series might get better, but if it takes a while to get there, then it's that's not going to be great for me. If I'm just being honest, like I'm not going to be able to enjoy that. Um, so we are leaving it up to this episode. And I'm saying that this episode actually has to get me to some degree. Doesn't necessarily have to be like the most exceptional level, but to some degree, it has to get me invested. It has to get me to care. Because if it doesn't, I don't see this. I don't see myself wanting to react to this anymore. If if it's just not doing enough for me, even if it's not outright terrible, if I just don't care, if I'm apathetic towards the series, then what's the point? You know? I just, I really want to like this more than I do. I really want to like this more than I do. But so far it hasn't given me a reason to. And so I'm hoping that this episode turns things around with that. Obviously, there's no guarantees for that, but hopefully it does. We'll see. That's really all I can say here. We'll see and hope for the best. So let's get into this and see how this episode makes me feel by the end of it. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because if it does fade to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. And for now, yeah. I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, this was definitely the episode of Cree Summer. It just had two major roles with her in it in both segments, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. Cree Summer is a great voice actress. She's been in the game for a long time and been doing great at it, so no issue there. But wow, it's like I just didn't expect her to hear her in both segments. Let's talk about this though. So our first segment was centered around wrestling. It was Shell in a Cell, which, Jesus, that pun. Obviously based off of the WWE staple Hell in a Cell. And what it basically came down to was the Turtles are watching a wrestling match in the rafters. Donnie ends up falling in, accidentally becomes champ somehow, even though that's not how that would work by any means, and starts getting a big head about it. So Raph and the others, mostly Raph, has to work to try and stop him, and eventually the previous champ comes back and is found out to be kind of a dirty cheater and everything, instead of this cool champion, this cool clean champion that they thought he was. He's basically he's a heel rather than a face. Heel, for those who don't know, in wrestling terms, a heel is the bad guy. A face is the good guy. There's also tweeners, who are also known as in-betweeners. Most people just use the term tweener, though. Which means that you're not really a face or a heel. You can display aspects of both. So when people say, like, heel turn or face turn, that's usually what they mean. Like, someone is changing from one side to the other. But, yeah, here we see a character who they thought while watching was a face and turned out to be a heel. And it seemed like they only thought he was face because they were just so enamored with him. They were just big fans of him. Most of them. Donnie wasn't even really as into it at first. And everything as we saw, but yeah. There's also this recurring joke in the episode about, like, Mikey, like, stealing the words out of Donnie's mouth every time, and including, like, for, like, calling shit and everything, and it's like, I didn't get, I didn't really find it funny. I just thought it was like, okay, why is that a recurring gag in this episode? I just didn't understand. I didn't get it, I guess you could say. And honestly, a lot of my, as you noticed, constant, I guess you could say, complaining about it not really being realistic to wrestling. It's just probably because I have been a pro wrestling fan for so long that it's just like, I know this is a children's cartoon. I know it's just being goofy and stuff, and it's not meant to be serious, but it is honestly a little distracting when it's like nothing about that was realistic. Like, nothing about that. It just it's a personal thing. I admit that, but it is something that bothered me, even if just personally. And in the end, even though they were segmented and on different sides of the ring at first, they all end up having to kind of team up to take down the former champ. And the promoter of the wrestling company just decides to declare herself champ out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, okay, sure, why the fuck not? I don't even know. The second segment is the one that explains the previous episode segment that we had. Because as I said, I found out that this was like that things were out of order, and when they went to that pizza place before, the interdimensional pizza place, it's like that was apparently that was supposed to take place after this episode. Um, and so it's like again, they mixed up the order and everything. I don't know why certain shows do that, but some shows have. I don't get it, but either way, in the end, it kind of comes down to, does it hurt the overall immersion? I don't really think so. At least not for me. My thing is like, I just assumed that they had already found that at some point. Seeing this here, it kind of comes across as, oh, like this, it just explains how they found that place. And also, they had very little interaction with, his name was Hueso, right? I think the credits said. The skeleton guy. So, since they had very little interaction with him in this, I can see how he didn't seem to know them in the other episode. So that clears that up, at least. But yeah, they go to this place and end up seeing that there's a kind of contest that the place holds. Get through this Minotaur maze, this maze of death, whatever you want to call it, and you get the best pizza, like their absolute best pizza. And so they try to do so. Leo tries to do so, mainly. He wants to do this because he wants to prove he's the best at something, get his name on the wall, get free pizza, all of it, really. And so he coerces his brothers into joining him without really telling them anything ahead of time. And they end up, trying to get through the maze, but getting into a fight with some sentient pizza accessories and stuff. Accessories is the wrong word. Utensils? Utensils would probably be the right word. And then they end up getting almost killed in a trap. So Leo does have to break the one rule and use his mystic powers. This gets the Minotaur, who I guess is the head of the restaurant. This gets her angry and she, lashes out at them. But they use their wits to be able to trick her into thinking like, oh, they've had better pizza elsewhere. So she makes sure that they get some of her pizza in order to, because she wants to prove them wrong. And they end up getting to go with just basically a slap on the wrist and their name on the wall of shame. This episode was okay. I didn't really have any big issues with it outside of the wrestling thing, but again, that's purely a personal thing for me. Just because, again, it's like, I am such a fan of pro wrestling that nothing in that made any sense to pro wrestling. None of that is how, oh, okay, there's maybe a couple things that were a little realistic, but it was overshadowed by literally everything else. But the problem here is that this episode was just okay. Nothing about it stood out to me. Nothing about it connected me with these characters or made me care. It didn't do anything to change how my opinion of the series was. It honestly just felt very mediocre. Not bad by any means, but not good either. And definitely not good enough to make me want to continue. As I said in the pre-thoughts, I kind of needed this to impress me. I needed this to turn my thoughts around and make me invested in seeing more. And it didn't do that. It very much did not. it didn't really do much at all in terms of anything. Honestly, I just kind of feel apathetic towards the series as a whole at this point. I just don't care, and that's not good for reactions. I know some people may not like it when I drop shows or whatnot, but the reason why I do it is usually because I'm not enjoying the show. And when that happens, it's like the reasoning, like that all comes to a head where it's like that would, you know, not be good for reactions. If I'm not enjoying the show, the reactions are going to suffer because of it, you know? I'm not going to be as invested. I'm going to be having a hard time even getting to them. And I don't want to force myself to sit through something I'm clearly not enjoying it, because it's not going to be good for me or you guys. It's not going to be good for how I appear on camera and stuff. And eventually it's going to make me resentful towards the show rather than just indifferent. I think it's better to just take this L where it sits and just admit that this show is not for me. It has its upsides for sure. Like I said before, the animation is phenomenal, without question. The voice acting is, for the most part, great. There is so much positives to this and so many great ideas. The problem is it's also reliant on a lot of mediocre humor and just isn't doing anything from what I can see. Like there's been like one moment of the tiniest bit of setup for the Foot Clan and nothing else. It's like the Foot Clan is kind of the go-to for the Turtles to take on. And we've seen almost nothing of that. We've just seen all these random, like, new enemies and stuff who I don't think were in previous shows, but I might be wrong, I don't know. I haven't seen every iteration of the Turtles. I don't recognize them, at least. But yeah, it's like, we're not getting, like, Shredder and stuff, or at least not yet. Like, Shredder has to appear in this at some point, right? But I feel like they would have at least done a little more to set up for it, even if they didn't want him to debut yet. But it's centering almost entirely around the mutants, around these mutations and everything. And it's like, that's fine, that's well and good, but, you know, again, if it just set up for some more stuff, you know? Maybe it's just me. And that's not even, again, the only issue I have with this, but still. It is something I just would have liked to see more, a little more of by this point. Again, even just setup. Like, Shredder doesn't have to be shown. They wouldn't have even had to show a lot of Foot Clan, or even any of the Foot Clan. Just to have, like, the symbol appear at a couple points, just to show that it's like, yeah, this has been kind of like things have been leading up to that. Like, maybe have it like, oh, they stop one of these enemies, maybe they have a Foot Clan symbol somewhere on them, and the Turtles discover this and wonder what it means. It's like something like that, you know? That would be enough. Because the thing is, this is also segmented. So we've had basically, with this episode, the equivalent of like 11 short-length episodes. Because each segment basically almost comes across as its own thing. That's kind of the point. And with the first episode being full length, it's like, yeah, it kind of comes across as like 11 at this point. It would have been 12 if the first episode was segmented as well, since this is episode 6. Because that's just basic math. But yeah. It's like, at this point, it's like, I would feel like they would just put in something more. because the only hint we got was just like visually. It wasn't even mentioned within the context of the series. And I might even be remembering that wrong on how, like, if it even was the Foot Clan that was shown, like in that one thing. I'm just kind of assuming. So, yeah, I just feel like there could have been something more. And again, it might just be a me thing. And it's not the only thing. It's just, I don't care either. That's the biggest issue. I don't care about the series, about the plot, about the characters. I'm not invested in it at all. At all. It's not even just like I'm not invested in it enough. I'm not at all. And that's a problem. Because, like, by this point, Amphibia had definitely hooked me in a lot more. Like, by episode 6, because remember, I originally dropped Amphibia at episode 2, and after that, it started progressively getting more better. I didn't need to add the more in there. It began progressively getting better. And by episode 6, it's like, yeah, I started to get it a little more. And Owl House had definitely already, like, started off strong and everything. I only dropped Owl House initially because of literally a single thing, and I regret doing that because I was wrong to do that. Because I was just so singularly focused on that one thing that it just completely took over my mind. So yeah. With this, though, it's like, I don't care. I have no investment in this series. I have nothing that's making me want to continue. And so, I think it just makes sense, honestly, to not continue. I know that may suck for some of you who really like this series, and again, it's not because of episodes or segments being out of order or whatnot. That's not an issue for me. That never came across as an issue for me. I never had an issue with that. It's because I just have not found any investment in this series or the characters. I just don't care. And as I said in the pre-thoughts, the only character I kind of am even the slightest bit liking is April. And she's barely in it. At least in these first 6 episodes. She's like, had like, what, maybe 2 segments where she's had a notable role. One of which being the first episode, which was double length. And then she, like, maybe appeared for a brief bit in another segment once. It's like, that's like 3 appearances in, again, basically what it amounts to as 11 segments. That's very, very little that we've gotten of her. Especially since one of those appearances was a minor appearance. And it's just, it's like she's the only character that I kind of like at this moment. It's like, that's not a great thing to have her just not appear. I don't care about Donnie or Mikey or Raph or Leo as how they're portrayed in this. Like, again, I like that they're portrayed as, you know, teenagers, but I have not become invested in them. I don't care yet. I don't care about them as characters yet. Again, Splinter has done the opposite of anything good for me. I really just don't like how Splinter is characterized in this. And none of the other characters invest me enough. Even like the couple who have come back at times, like the one chef guy. It's like, I don't care really at all. So I really, really do apologize. I've been trying to like really hammer in my thoughts on this and really hammer in and emphasize why I'm dropping this. But the simplest way to put it is it's just clearly not for me. It's clearly not my kind of thing, not my kind of show, not my kind of turtles. It's just like it's not like really bad or anything, but the fact that it's not investing me at all, and there are aspects that are actively turning me away, is not the best sign. It's not doing really anything for me. That's really all I can say. And again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Maybe if it was aired in the original production order, maybe like certain episodes would have come up already that would have changed my mind on that. So I don't know. You might be able to say that was an issue, but I don't know. I don't know if that would have been the case. But the thing is, like I said in the pre-thoughts, this episode would have had to really impress me at this point, because none of the other episodes that I watched before did anything for me either. And as you know, even the first episode, at least in the airing order, I don't know if that was the first episode in production order, but the first episode that we saw, the double length one, I really didn't like. Almost at all. I only continued after that point in the first place to continue to give this series a chance. There were a lot more issues even with that one, especially in terms of the pacing. But yeah, so I very much apologize for anyone who really likes this series. If it's just not for me, it's just not for me. There's not really much of anything I can do about that. Not every series is going to click for everyone, you know? But that means we will be bringing Big City Greens right back into the rotation, because as you know, we just cut out a slot, and we cut out the Big City Greens slot just because I felt like it was the one slot I would want to cut out. But we cut that out, and I said we would bring it back in the first chance we got, and it's like, okay, so ends up we're getting rid of this show, so let's just bring Big City Greens back in its place. It just, yeah. it just works out as well. So yeah, I very much apologize. I very much do. But for the sake of my own enjoyment in recording reactions and for how the reactions end up going for you guys, I think it's the best choice to make. So I'm sorry, but Rise of the TMNT is dropped. Maybe I'll watch it on my own, maybe I won't, I don't know. I probably won't watch it with Nanino Anime's reactions because, you know, they have the cut down reactions. I'm not subscribed to their Patreon, so yeah. Either way, we're just going to end things here. So let me know at least what you thought of this episode in the comments below. And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.